Hello, welcome back to another YouTube video. Today I'm going to be doing my 14.6 support tier list, so if you enjoy the content, like, subscribe, and let's get into it. I'm going to be targeting the same criteria as I did for my mid and ADC tier list, where it's like focused above your, on your above average player. Target audience being around plat 4 to diamond 1, as this encapsulates a good amount of players who I can recommend champions to in hopes that they will improve and then climb to some of the higher ranks. So let's go for the most popular champion, Lux. Lux is going to be with my A tier. She's doing fine at the moment. She's getting buffed next patch. Zax is going to be your core support item. Alongside that, you can run like Ludens, Malignant, Storm Surge if you are snowballing. These are all good options. Shadow Flame can work. You spike early, fall off later on. Arcane Comet, Dark Harvest are competitive rune choices. Dark Harvest, obviously, if you're able to snowball consistently, is a good option. Arcane Comet is more consistent. But yeah, Lux a solid A tier option. Thresh is going to be within my B tier. Honestly, Thresh is a fairly close to A tier option. Even within like mid elo, I would really recommend maxing E on this champion if you're unable to consistently land hooks, as it does have a really strong rank up incentive and can work quite nicely. Slay is of course the support item you want to go. Trailblazer tends to be best in slot's default item. Locket and Knights are solid options though, depending on what you need within your comp. Of course, Locket's good AoE shield. Guardian is better than Aftershock, and Aftershock tends to be a bit more effective than Glacial. Glacial, bit nerfed at this point, bit heavily nerfed at this point. You tend to just not opt into it on a lot of these supports, other than in conditional matchups. But yeah, Thresh, solid B tier option, Max E. And yeah, give it a try. Nautilus going to be with my A tier. Honestly, Nautilus is kind of close to the B tier. The opposite of Thresh, where Nautilus over time has kind of started falling back down. Once again, Nautilus does have the option to Emax. That is something we have seen experimented even within pro leagues more recently. Yeah, Bloodsong is a support item I would really recommend giving a try on this champion. It does perform quite well on a lot of the engaged supports who do auto a decent amount within their trading pattern. Think Leona, think Nautilus, stuff like this. Yeah, Nautilus in a good spot. You can opt into Bloodsong, you can opt into Slay, Trailblazer, Locket Knights, once again, Aftershock, Glacial are competitive, and Emax is a viable option. Moving on, Morgana is going to be on my B tier. I'm not a huge fan of Morgana. Believe there are other supports which are more consistent and don't require as much setup to function within the game. Morgana, of course, if you can land Binding, is a very valuable champ, of course, if you are Q-maxing. Zax, Leandries, Zhonya's, Rylai, Comet, Q, W max are competitive options. If you want a bit more DPS, then W is there as a choice. But yeah, towards the bottom end of the B tier. Senna, going to be in my A tier. Senna is high A tier, close towards the S tier, but she's fallen down over the last couple of patches. Of course, she got the Q nerf, which hurt her scaling a bit. It was Q bonus AD scaling, I believe, down by 10%. Of course, she also got hit by the fact that Yoma's was broken at the beginning of this patch, but that doesn't really matter. It's like got fixed. She did get hit by the fact that her soul generation rate is now down from 8% to 2%. Even though this is support, it will hurt her a bit. Of course, if she does want to last hit, maybe ADC's out of lane, has died, then she's going to get punished a bit more for that. So she belongs in the A tier now. She's still close to the S tier. You're looking at something like a Yomu's build. Of course, still opting into the Bloodsong. Yomu's Opportunity is a competitive option. Edge of Night's good for the shield. RFC's good for range. LDR, IE are both good options if you are like late game build. Grudge is also a solid option if you're opting into a lot of lethality. She, of course, is still a scaling pick within support role, whereas ADC tends to be a bit more mid game skewed. Support Senna still very much focused around that late game scaling. Lulu. So Lulu is going to be within my A tier. She's also kind of towards the middle of the pack. She's definitely better than she has been in the past, where she ended up being a bit more of a pro skew champion. Of course, think back to like Sivazeri meta. Nowadays, Dreammaker works quite nicely on her. Ardent Chevalier's is something you're going to hear a lot of me talk about. Chevalier's is actually a really good item on a lot of champions you might not even expect it to be good on. Staff, Moonstone, solid options. Redemption, Mikhail's, you're running your area. You can opt into Guardian if you're looking for something a bit more defensive. But Lulu, solid option. Honestly, I would recommend playing Lulu in her current state. Blitzcrank is going to be my first champ in the S tier. So Blitzcrank, very simple to play, probably the best hook champ on the patch. Some of the others are a bit more conditional, require a bit more on snowballing, or a bit harder to pilot. Blitzcrank, very simple, very easy to build. You're looking at something like a Bloodsong or a Slay. Bloodsong, once again, works quite nicely on Blitz. He does auto on his E. Celestial can be opted into really heavy burst comps, but I wouldn't recommend defaulting on Celestial like a lot of people have been. Trailblazer, Glacial tends to be what you want to opt into. And yeah, Blitz is in a very solid spot, a good S tier pick. So this is probably going to be the first questionable pick from me. I'm going to put Leona in S tier. I believe Leona is actually a really good champion in her current state. If you remember back towards the end of last season, I believe, she got the W buff, which actually did a huge amount to like increase her durability. And this season, she has ended up being a bit stronger with the current items. She is a massive benefactor of Zeke's in its current state. She really values the slow field on that. You can opt into Bloodsong, Slay, and then Celestial tends to be the weakest of the options. And then, yeah, Zeke's is a really strong item on the owner. I'd really recommend playing this champion in its current state. Of course, Mark Treads are still one of your biggest enemies, and if you're pairing her with a lot of CC, then that is a problem you will run into. But yeah, Leona is a solid S tier pick within solo queue. Pyke is going to be with my A tier. So Pyke is a solid champion in his current state. He got buffed towards the beginning of the season as he was slightly underperforming. You're looking at something like Bloodsong for the most part as his primary support item. Celestial works quite nicely into heavy burst compositions. Cyclosword, not a bad first item option if you want to be a bit more safe, and things like Umbral and Youmu's are still decent picks. Edge of Night, you've really spiked hard as early game as a champion. Later on you do begin to fall off, but Pyke is in a solid spot. He is a good hook champ. He has good early game threatening power, and yeah, there's lots of power in this pick. Zyra, going to be my first champion in the S plus tier. So Zyra is in a very good spot at the moment, really benefiting from the power of Zaxax. That is of course being nerfed next patch. Liandry, Rylai, she's a very low skew champion. That is something you do have to be aware of. Mid game power as well, and yeah, Comet works quite nicely on her. She is a good S plus champion. Now that a lot of the OP champs towards the beginning of the season, think Senna, think Maokai, have been nerfed down, Zyra fits the S plus tier quite nicely. Karma, going to be within my C tier. So Karma got hit pretty heavily this patch. She was a big loser of her nerfs. Sometimes you're not even opting into this Malignance build, which was the reason why she was so strong. You're looking at something like a Shirelia. Zaxax and Dreammaker are competitive options. Zaxax getting nerfed next patch will probably make Dreammaker the primary option. I think, yeah, Shirelia is decent. Malignance, Horizon, Cosmic, Mandate tends to be a bit better if you're going down the supportive route. You spike early, you Giga fall off later on into the game. You're looking at Airy, you're looking at Comet as your rune options. She's just not great at the moment. I'd recommend waiting until the next patch when she gets buffed, but she is a C tier pick. Janna. So Janna, of course, is probably the biggest pain point in support role at the moment. She is the most obvious OP pick on the current patch. She's not getting nerfed next patch. They do think that the nerfs towards Zaxax is going to be enough to kind of like bring her power level down, but Zaxax Mandate is an incredibly strong item on her. Shirelia's, you want to be opting into like a Dark Seal, picking up like a Medjay's if you're snowballing. Airy, Comet, both good rune choices. She is the best OP champion at the moment. Definitely abuse her if you are looking to gain some free LP. Brand is going to be in my S tier. So Brand is a very strong champion in low elo. He does tend to fall off as you go up the ranks, but alongside Zyra, he has some insane DPS output. Great team fighter, decent scaling. You're looking at something like a Rylai into Liandry's build. You can opt into like a Malignance if you are going significantly. Comet, Dark Harvest, you spike mid game. That is kind of where you want to play around your strengths. And yeah, Brand is a solid S tier option. Nami is going to be over my A tier. So Nami, Dreammaker, Zaxax are both good support items on her. Mandate tends to be her primary item. You don't really have much choice there. Shirelia's is also a good opt-in item. And when you're running Airy, you tend to pair her with things which synergize with her E. She is being changed next patch, but she is a solid A tier option. Kind of sits within the middle of A tier. Yuumi, going to be over my C tier. So Yuumi is, of course, a pain point of this game. She isn't great for the most part, and they want to keep her fairly bad. Honestly, if I would recommend, like, the only place where I'd really recommend playing Yuumi is alongside something like a Sivir or a Zeri, where you can kind of use the safety nets of the champion to scale up through the game. Yuumi, of course, is a really heavy scaler champion. You want to go late into the game, running things like the Dreammaker. Mandate is usually actually a pretty good first item on this champion. You can run things like Ardent, Moonstone, Staff, Dawncord tends to be a solid capstone item. And then, yeah, run Airy instead of Comet, and you Gigascale into the late game. That is kind of where your power comes in, and that's where you will start climbing up the tiers as being like a better champion. But I wouldn't recommend playing Yuumi. She is very limiting in what she can do. She has fairly rough synergies. The best friend bonus is very limiting. If you have a bad ADC, then you are really punished. And yeah, it's got a lot of demerits, which is why she's going to be in the C tier. Seraphine, going to be with my beta. She's not bad. She's just weaker than she was when she was at her strongest point. She did get pushed more towards support, so that's why she still holds up here. She's a bit weaker in ADC, which is why I'm pretty sure I believe I put her in the A tier in ADC. But yeah, Seraphine, a B tier support pick. You're looking at something like Dreammaker, Shurelia's, Rylai are competitive options, Moonstone, Staff, and then like Aerial Guardian, depending on what you need, whether you need to be a bit more defensive, where you can be opt into a bit more of the offensive rune choices. There are options there. And yeah, Seraphine, solid B tier pick. Milio going to be in my S tier. So Milio is like a close, like low S, high A option. He is definitely a simple to play champion and really synergizes with a lot of marksmen. If you're able to abuse his W alongside something like Arden, then this champion is borderline OP. Like, it has so much value just off that kind of like core of W Arden. But yeah, you're looking at something like Dreammaker, Shurelia, Moonstone, Redemption. Airy tends to be the only keystone you can really run. Guardian is really niche if you do want to opt into it. Like, I would just recommend Airy for the most part. And yeah, he is a low S tier option. Xerath, I'm going to put above Lux. I believe Xerath is slightly better, has a not more tools per se, but just access to more synergistic comps. His range is really valuable. He does a bit more damage, a bit more consistently. Lux does have better setup with like the E and the Q. The slow and the Q can be really valuable. Plus it can just go through targets, which is very nice. But yeah, Xerath has access to a bit more damage. His ult is a very valuable tool. Zax, Ludens, Horizon, Storm Surge if you're snowballing. First Strike is better than Comet in most circumstances, unless you are playing into double range where you can't consistently get first strike procs. But Xerath, a solid A tier option, like a mid to high end A tier. Rakan is going to be in my A tier, so Rakan isn't quite S tier. He is definitely one of the highest A tier picks. He's quite close, if in fact. But you're looking at something like Slay, Trailblazer. He has really good he synergizes really well with Zeke's. Once again, if your champion has a good ultimate, which like requires going in, think Leona, think Rakan, think Varel, then yeah, Zeke's has a lot of value on these champions. Rakan is one of them. He works really nicely with Zeke's. Guardian, of course, is the main keystone you're going to be running. He scales decently well compared to a lot of the other engage options, so that is definitely a positive on this pick. But yeah, he's high A tier, low S. Of course, if you put a lot of games into him, then he definitely does like climb up to the S tier. But I'm going to be on the cautious side, and I'd recommend him as an A tier pick. Soraka, same goes. Honestly, close to the S tier, but like going to be within my A tier. She did get buffed this patch, or last patch, I can't specifically remember, but she's definitely in a good spot now. Dreammaker, Moonstone, Redemption, Warmogs being changed actually was really big for her. The current Warmogs, which now gives out of combat movement speed, plus 5 movement speed on the item, is really strong. Staff works quite nicely later on into your build if you're running alongside a lot of AP. And then Airy and Guardian are options you can opt into. And yeah, she's a solid A tier, high A tier, low S tier option. Maokai also going to be high A tier, low S tier. Maokai is a bit of a weird one. He's very simplistic to play, but has been nerfed a significantly large amount of times at this point. He's received like double nerf on the Slay. He's received 3 nerfs directly targeted at him. None of these really hit him like a huge amount, but over time he's kind of fallen down. Lots of people did put a lot of games into playing him, which is why he does end up climbing a bit more, as he does have like a lot of people who just outright play him at this point. But you're looking at something like Slay, Trailblazer, Locket, Knights, Aftershock. He scales decently well, does have a really rough laning phase into a lot of matchups where you can't really utilize your W, and you have to just play around being a peel bot for your marksman. But yeah, he is a solid A tier option, close to S tier, but on the cautious side, more of an A tier pick. Camille, gonna be a low A tier option. Camille is a very, very elite skewed pick. Like, one of the like, if you've watched Hillisang play it into like K-Corp, I believe it was, that really shows like the skill ceiling of this pick. You're being able to just run in or like waltz into enemy jungle, being able to kill them, being able to get that like advantage for like the power of the pick with the Halo Blades, the damage you can output with your E. There's lots of strengths to this champion, but yes, it does require a lot of games. If you haven't played Camille in the top lane before, it can be quite a difference to a lot of the current supports. But yes, the higher up you go, the better it does get. It's going to be A tier for this tier list, as I'm going a bit more like normal mid-elo skew. But yeah, Camille, really solid champion. Bloodsong, Eclipse, Cinder Sky, Starix. You're running your Halo Blades, you're playing really aggressive early, getting those advantages, and yeah, she doesn't scale great, but like, yeah, she's a solid pick. Swain, gonna be my B tier. I hate Swain support. Swain support is like one of my biggest hates within the game. I think he is wasted as like potential within that role. Like mid Swain, APC Swain are both really good picks. They have really strong like gold scaling. They can work really nicely off the items you give him. When you're support, you're just stunting yourself and you don't synergize as well with some of the keystones which you want within the other roles. Rather than running like Conks and Airy, you tend to opt into things like Electrocute and Glacial in a lot of circumstances. But yeah, you're looking at things like Zax, Slay. Slay tends to perform a bit better. Rylai, Leandri, Zonya, Glacial, Electrocute tends to be a bit better than Conks, but Glacial tends to be something you can opt into in certain circumstances. And yeah, he's a B tier pick. Yeah, that's about my kind of rant on Swain. Right, Alistar. So Alistar's also going to be in the B tier. Alistar's not bad, but he tends to be a bit more elite skewed as well. You're looking at things like Slay, Trailblazer, Zeke's he synergizes really well with. Knights, Aftershock, and FaZe are good options, tend to outperform Glacier ever so slightly. FaZe is also a bit more elite skewed, so if you want to go even further and like utilize the MS, being able to play around the Keystone, then yes, he is a bit more elite skewed, but like, I'd recommend just Aftershock and yeah, just playing him with good synergies and trying to just use that power. Ashe, I was really close to putting in D tier. I think Ashe is the biggest fake pick within solo queue. You really want to be abusing the power of this champion early game. Like running the Halo Blades and like opting into like an early dark and just abusing that power is really important. If you're not able to synergize with your marksman, then it can really hurt the power of this champion. Which is why it can massively fall down the tier list. Overall, I also just don't think it's great for solo queue. Like this pick, it hinges on too many things, and I think that just ends up being a big weakness of it. Obviously, we do see a bit in competitive. It has fizzled out a bit. You are looking at things like Umbreglaive. You're looking at Bloodsong, Umbreglaive, Mandate, or Axiom. Chemtech Chainsword into lots of healing, and then yeah, Halo Blades for like the aggression. It's in the C tier. It's close to D tier. I wouldn't recommend playing it. There are better lane aggro picks. Pantheon is going to be within my B tier. So Pantheon, not a bad pick, like compared to last season where I'd honestly consider him close to D tier. Pantheon this season is actually like close to A. He is, of course, a relatively simple to play champion, but he synergizes well with Bloodsong Eclipse, kind of akin to something like the Camille. You can opt into Youmu's if you're really snowballing and looking to run around the map. Cinder Sky works great with this champion, and then, of course, you can opt into the Starix third. PTA, Conks, he does fall off. You want to be using that early aggression. But yeah, champ's not bad. Like, he is a solid pick if you are looking for something a bit more aggressive. Braum is going to be with my S tier. I actually think Braum's a great champion. I love playing with Braum. Like the amount of things this champion can like enable and like utilizing his passive. The shield is really valuable. He's really durable as a champion. There's just loads of strengths here. You're looking at something like a Slay, or you want the Slay on Braum. It is a really good item on him. Knights, Trailblazer both work quite nicely. Locket, of course, is something good to opt into, and Guardian is a great keystone for him. Braum, really good S tier pick. Rel is going to be my A tier. She's a high A tier option. Honestly, like this 5 here are really close to S tier, but like just a bit of a tier below, kind of like a high A tier margin. Rel is a really solid pick. Of course, she's being deleted from jungle next patch. Getting a bit more MR for that. But yeah, Rel within the support role, still a decent pick. You're looking at things like Slay, Trailblazer, Zeke's, Glacial, or Aftershock. And yeah, there's power there. Zeke synergizes really well with her ultimate. Glacial allows her to hold people for longer. Aftershock gives her a bit more durability if that's what you're looking for. Solid A tier pick. Shaco. So Shaco is actually really close. Like, Shaco is like a high A tier option. If you put the games into him, he might be close to S+. Like, Shaco synergizes really well with the items at the moment and is a really obnoxious support pick. When you're able to get later on into the game, the boxes have so much value because there are lots of champions within the game which actively have to detonate the box to, like, be able to walk into, like, Baron, Pit, stuff like that. Of course, if they're melee, then, yeah, they don't have the ability to, like, hit the boxes from range with something like an Oracle and do just have to activate them. There is power in the ultimate as also being a really heavy burst tool when you are going AP. I wouldn't really recommend playing AD Shaco support, even though it is viable and there is some level of power there. AP Shaco is where the power really is at. Zaxax, Ludens, Leandries, you can opt into Morello into heavy healing comps, and then Comet. And yeah, you're good to go. He scales really nicely. You can opt into like a Rabadon's later on the game, Crypt Bloom, Zonya, Cosmic. There's just loads of items you can kind of opt into depending on game state. And yeah, Shaco is a really good pick. Definitely recommend putting games into this champion at the moment. Nico, going to be a low A tier pick. Nico requires a lot of games to play. Her passive is like really unique in like the shape shifting. Being able to utilize that is a really cool part of her kit, like getting good ultimates, faking out with ease, faking out roams, stuff like this is a very important skill on this pick. It can be the difference between a good Nico player and a bad Nico player. You're looking at something like Zaxax, Rocket Belt, Zonya, once again running Comet. And yeah, she's a low A tier pick. She does have a really strong laning phase. If you're running something like Airy or Comet, alongside Scorch, you do a lot of damage, lots of poke on the Q. And yeah, low A tier pick. Vel'Koz is going to be my S tier, so this is going to surprise a lot of people. But Shreveria Vel'Koz is broken. I'm like 90% sure that this pick is probably S+ tier. I'm just being on the cautious side as like, it's not a really heavily played champion, so there is some like one-trick biases there. But Shreveria Vel'Koz looks incredible in the data. I have seen it a couple times within my games. I've seen a couple of Masters players play it. And it's looked really good, like the roams, the ability to like play around the kiting power. Of course, in the past, Ghost Vel'Koz used to be a really strong thing you could opt into in the mid lane. We don't see as much mid Vel'Koz these days, but like, yeah, the movement speed, it all makes sense. You can run things like Mandate, you're running Zaxax, so yeah, Zaxax, Shreveria, Mandate, Storm Surge if you're snowballing, Dark Harvest and Comet are both good rune options. And yeah, Vel'Koz looks like an S tier pick at the moment. Where are you going to be with my C tier? Hui is a really Hui is a decently complicated champion to play. Like, you want to put a lot of games into him, so you're cycling your abilities in the correct order. Being able to pick out what is good in the situation is a very important skill. You are looking at something like Zaxax, Ludens, Horizon, Crypt, Comet or Dark Harvest. He doesn't have quite the same power as a lot of the other AP mages within the bot lane. He requires a lot more gold to kind of scale up. He also does want levels, so there is some heart there when you put him in a duo lane. And for that reason, I've put him in the C tier. I think if you are, like, skilled at this pick, then he does rise up and probably closer to the A tier. But yeah, for the most part, he's a C tier pick. I wouldn't really recommend playing him. Sona going to be low A. She is being changed next patch, but on the current patch, she is a low A tier pick. I'm not a huge fan of Sona in current state. She does kind of, it feels pretty bad to play with Sona, especially if you don't play like hugely aggressive. You're not opting into things like the Blood Song, which is a decent option on Sona at the moment. That aggression could be like the difference. But yeah, like Dreammaker, Blood Song are both options. Archangels, if you were looking for durability. Moonstone, Staff, Airy. She scales really heavily into the game. But yeah, it's about finding the level of aggression without just running it down on Sona. But even then, she's still not the greatest pick in the meta at the moment. And yeah, it's kind of like a low A tier pick. Bard. Subad was OP at the beginning of this season. He's kind of like a mid-A tier pick at the moment. You're looking at either Slay or Bloodsong. I would recommend Slay for the most part. Locket, Trailblazer, both good items. And then like Mandate, Kanik, Rukun, Frozen Heart is a bit nerfed at this point, but still an option. Guardian tends to be better than Fleet. And yeah, he's a mid-A tier pick. Zilean is going to be within my A tier. So Zilean, of course, we had the whole Grasp, Warmog, Zilean saga. That seems to have like kind of faded away with like Slay being nerfed. It is still something you can opt into. You are looking at something like either Slay or Zaxax, depending on whether you are going like for tankier variations or you're going a bit more AP heavy. Think like Shrelia, stuff like this. But yeah, like Zaxax, Shrelia, Mandate, Airy tends to be that kind of route. Slay, Warmogs, and then like some tankier items, like maybe like a Knights and stuff, can be what you opt into if you're going down that tankier route. You're looking at Guardian or Grasp for that route. Guardian, of course, better for like durability. Grasp, if you're able to consistently get the stacks, is a bit better in certain circumstances. But yeah, it really depends on like what you're laning against for the most part. But yeah, he's like a mid-A tier pick. Tahm Kench is going to be my B tier. I also dislike Tahm Kench support. I think it's very item hungry for the most part, because you want to get that heart still. It's what kind of gets him going throughout the game. If you're able to get it early and then you're stacking, he's a decent pick. Like, he is a solid B, A tier, possibly even S in like the right situations pick. But for the most part, because of that, like, greediness as a champion, he does kind of sit in the B tier for the moment. You do have to go Slay, you have to go Heart still. Otherwise, I really just wouldn't recommend playing this champion. Sunfire, Kanik, Spirits, Grasp is better than Guardian at this point. Unless you are not able to get any Grasp stacks, then yeah, opt into the Guardian. But yeah, I wouldn't recommend playing Tahm support. I'd recommend playing him top, unless you are very, very like you are very what's the word? You know your ADC is going to carry. You are understanding that is your win con. He knows he has to carry, and yeah, that's like the situation where you can kind of play Tahm. Renata gonna be with my A tier. I quite like Renata as a champion. I think she has a lot of merit. Is she the perfect solo queue pick? Probably not. Within pro play, she definitely has a lot more merits. But yeah, looking at something like a Slay, Shrelia, Mandate, Locket, Redemption, Guardian build, she's a solid pick, a good A tier pick. You do kind of want to make use of your W though. Pairing her with someone who like synergizes with attack speed can be quite nice. Malphite gonna be with my D tier. I hate Malphite support. It tends to just be this obnoxious Zaxax AP like Malignant, Storm Surge, Comet, where if it's behind, it's completely useless. If it's ahead, it can be turbo hard to play against. Oftentimes it tends to be the first thing where it just isn't very useful. I wouldn't really recommend playing this pick unless you are very confident in your skill and just being able to body lanes kind of thing. Yeah, I would recommend other things over Malphite. There are more consistent AP options which aren't so conditional on their ultimate and not just like a Q poke bot. And have like better tools. Taric is going to be my S tier. So Taric is a great defensive option at the moment. He synergizes really well with Dreammaker. Okay, so Dreammaker Taric is actually in a really good spot. It's something which I do want to see a couple more people play before I really like say this is like actually meta defining. But yeah, there is definitely some tech there with Dreammaker Taric. Slay is still a good option. Knights Locket, Fimbulwinter. Guardian, Glacial, both solid options. Yeah, of course, if you want to be a bit more defensive, or if you want a bit more crowd control ability, yeah, there is power there. But yeah, keep an eye out for Dreammaker Taric. There is definitely power there, and I do want to see more people play it before I give like a solid verdict. Yeah. So Teemo going to be one with beta. Teemo is a solid support option, honestly. Like, he's not a troll pick. You can definitely make this champion work, especially into double auto attack lanes, or lanes which you can kind of scale through and then utilize the fact that you're really strong later on into the game. Zaxax, Malignance, Leandry, Dark Harvest gives him a lot of power, gives him a lot of obnoxious capability later on with his shroom control. And yeah, he's a solid B tier pick. Zac going to be with my A tier. Zac also towards the higher end. Zac support, of course, has always been like a niche off-meta thing, which isn't the most popular, but definitely has some merits in the fact that his crowd control's really strong. His gank, or like his lane gank setup is like kind of interesting in the way it functions. You can opt into E max or like 3.0 W max. there are different variations you can kind of play around lane depending on what you need. Slay, and honestly, like a lot of the support items work on him. Zax can work if you're looking to be a bit more aggressive with some like a Dark Seal and maybe like a Leandry. You can also opt into Celestial Opposition if you're looking for a bit more anti-burst. And yeah, there are items there which he can definitely function with. Vigar is gonna be within my Vigar can be within my C tier. I'll be generous. I'm not a huge fan of Vigar support. Obviously, he wants to farm off the wave, which is the worst thing, because like you can't really operate with that as a support unless you are just fully focused on like committing Q poke, which can be dangerous in certain lanes where you can get engaged on. Of course, the cage is a very valuable tool. But yeah, you're looking at something like a Zax Chevaliers, into like a Storm Surge, Comet or Ari, both are good rune choices. And yeah, it's like a low C tier pick. Heimerdinger, going to be a low B tier pick. Definitely fell off since last season. Nowhere near as a strong performance. Like the Ashe synergy within competitive just isn't really seen as much anymore. Yeah, you're looking at like a Zax, Leandry's, Rhyhorn, Comet, and kind of just playing around that core and just trying to be as powerful and obnoxious with your turrets as possible. The setup's quite nice, so yeah, as part of that. Twitch and honestly MF both can go in the D tier. They don't really function as supports anymore. Twitch is too heavily nerfed compared to, or not nerfed, but like his items are nowhere near as good as they were from last season. He doesn't like any of the support options. Like Celestial Opposition might be his best like support item. He doesn't like Zax. He doesn't like Blood Song. And then, like, yeah, Nashor's, Rabadon, Shadow Flame tends to be his free item core. And then you're still running your Halo Blades, but yeah, it's nowhere near as good as it was last season. Like a D tier option. MF, of course, really hurt by the current item system as well. Zax, Ludens, Leandry's, Morello, Comet tends to be her best core. But calling it a best core when it's like a 40% win rate build, it's kind of, yeah, it's not good. Also just really hurt by the support items. She doesn't really value any of them that highly, and she finds herself in the D tier because of this. And Shen, actually a solid B tier pick. So Shen, Blood Song, Celestial Opposition both work quite nicely on him. You're looking at Heartsteel Rush, kind of like akin to like a Tahm Kench, except from you have a bit more supportive capability other than just your ultimate. You can kind of like peel with your E. You can utilize your W to block auto attacks. There's just a lot more merits to this champion as a support. And then yeah, Sunfire or support items. You tend to run like Guardian, Aftershock. I wouldn't recommend Grasp as support role Shen, but it is still something there into like double melee lanes. Yeah, he is a solid B tier pick. So yeah, those are my thoughts for like a mid-elo support tier list. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.